Quitting smoking and cravings. Are you one of those people that every time you quit smoking, you fail because your brain keeps thinking about a cigarette? If that's you, in this video, if you stay to the end, we're going to give you 2 things that you can do to beat those cravings.
Completely shocked at how well they worked. My cravings were totally controlled, and I would recommend it to anyone. It was really life-changing for me.
I went to TED and I was actually surprised. It was so easy.
Okay, let's hop right in. We need to start with a definition of what a craving is. At the simplest level, in terms of the definition of a craving, it's simply a powerful desire for something. What does that actually mean? Well, what it means is, it's like when a chemical stimulates the pleasure sensor in our brain. So what happens is our brain has a pleasure sensor, and when it is stimulated, our brain releases dopamines. When we do this time and time again, over time, repeatedly, something happens that's called classical conditioning. Okay, people often know the story of Pavlov's dog. You give a dog a food every time you ring a bell, eventually you can ring a bell and the dog's mouth will water. That's called classical conditioning. Okay, what happens is when we get classical conditioning going in our brain, it basically creates triggers because of something called association. What if we do this enough at the same time, over and over again, repeatedly, we create an association in our brain. So the average smoker smokes 25 cigarettes a day and takes 20 puffs. 625 times a day, you go smoke feel good. 625 times a day, you stimulate the pleasure sensor in your brain, because that's what nicotine does. It stimulates your pleasure sensor and causes your brain to release dopamine. And when you do that, every time you have a coffee, every time you get up, every time you eat a meal, every time you have a drink, every time you socialize, every time you talk on the phone, you create an association in your brain between that activity and the nicotine stimulating your pleasure sensor and releasing dopamine. That's what a craving is. It is a relationship between something you do and the release of dopamine in your brain. That's a really good definition of craving. Okay, so let's really drill down into this craving. And there are 2 types that are triggered, one by stress and one by habit. Because smoking is way more of a habit than an addiction. Addiction does play a role because nicotine is an addictive substance, but it's more of the habit than it is of the addiction. So let's just drill right down into what's actually happening so we can break the cycle. This is the actual neuroscience behind a craving. It is called the adaptive model. So what's happening here? So when we do something over and over again, chronically, like smoking, chronic smoking, what happens is our brain actually changes its physical structure. It's called neuroadaptation. And it changes it to the point of it goes, oh, I need pleasure, I do this. Okay, that's neuroadaptation. Because of the chronic smoking and the chronic stimulating of our pleasure sensor in our brain, we create this association. When we create that association in our brain, what happens is when something changes in our environment, okay, it triggers our neurotransmitters. What does that mean? What that means is when you desire to have pleasure because of habit or stress, your brain goes, wait a minute, my neurotransmitters go, I don't have the dopamine. So when you don't have the dopamine, what happens is you notice an absence of it. Your brain notices an absence of it. You then get withdrawal, which drives the craving. And you relapse. What does relapse mean? It means you go back up and you do the thing that you chronically do. Okay? So if this is out of habit because you do it every time you have a coffee, okay, what happens is when we get down past the thing we do all the time to how we change our brain to something that happens in our environment, the neurotransmitters are picking up in our environment. I'm having a coffee. Well, wait a minute, when I have a coffee, I'm usually releasing dopamine from the smoking, right? From putting our hand to our mouth, smoke, feel good. But wait, the dopamine's not here. I'm not having the cigarette. I'm not having the cigarette. Withdrawal. That triggers cravings. Boom, relapse. We go back up and we have the smoke. That's what's actually happening. That's the cycle. The other cycle is stress. So because we chronically smoke and because our brain goes, when I smoke, I feel good, we get stressed. We need to feel good. Okay. This has a more of a complex cycle that has to do with how our brain produces serotonin. We don't need to understand that. Just need to understand that when we're stressed, our brain knows instinctually that it needs to feel good. How does it traditionally feel good when we're stressed? From smoking. So what happens is we notice that we're not feeling good and we're stressed. Guess what that does? It drives withdrawal and it drives the craving. Then we relapse and we go back to the thing that we know will drive our brain to produce an endorphin. That's what a craving is. This is the neuroscience behind craving. It's really actually very simple. We've just trained our brain and changed its structure to think smoke, feel good. We need to feel good in the environment either because whenever I do this activity, I feel good, or I'm stressed, I need to feel good. We don't get the dopamine, so our brain goes, wait a minute, I know how to get the dopamine. I smoke, so I'm going to make sure I smoke. I'm going to get withdrawal, I'm going to get a craving, and I'm going to relapse, and I'm going to do it all over again. So the key to dealing with craving is understanding it's just a cycle, and we have to break it. So I'm going to give you a way to break the habit and a way to break the stress. Okay, so here they are, okay? In my online course, there's actually 5 ways we teach you to how to deal with this. And I'm going to give you one of them today that deals with each one of these 2 ways, habit and stress. Okay, so here's what you need to do. You need to stop and breathe. And you're going to do this for either way. But you'll notice is built in here is how to deal with each method, both habit and stress. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to stop and breathe. Why? Because when we are stressed, we need to take control back to stop the stress. The easiest way to take control back is to control our physiology. The easiest way to control our physiology is through breathing. So we stop and breathe, the stress cycle. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to smile. What does smiling do? It releases endorphins or dopamine. Okay, so it will release both. So when we smile, our body is going to release endorphins and dopamine. Even if the smile is fake, it will still do it. It doesn't know the difference between a real smile and a fake smile. So that helps both sides, stress and habit, deal with the feel-good part, the dopamine or the endorphins. You're going to say, I don't smoke. The reason why you're going to say, I don't smoke is when you say, I'm a non-smoker, it's a self-constructed identity. Do you believe in the tooth fairy? No, you don't. Are you a non-tooth fairyist? No. Why? Because it's a silly self-constructed identity. No different. You're just simply going to smile and say, I don't smoke. Then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to get up and go somewhere else. Here's why. Remember the part about the association or the trigger. This will help with that. You need to break the cycle. You need to break the trigger by getting up and going somewhere else. So just let me recap. Here's what you're going to do to deal both with habit triggers and stress. You're going to stop and breathe. You're going to smile. You're going to say, I don't smoke. And then you're going to get up and go somewhere else and get something else you want in your life. Go hug your partner, pet a dog, go for a walk. If you like this video and it's helpful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, my Facebook page. And when you subscribe, just hit the like button. Thank you so much.